Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Rain Bennett. I am your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode, and I hope that you love it. David, welcome to the Storytelling Lab.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I want to get right into it. I spend a lot of time on TikTok. On that platform, you have over 1 million followers. I want to ask you very simply and straightforwardly, what exactly is your mission?
Interesting. I haven't had that question asked. What is my mission? I want to empower people to be able to be themselves and affect the change that they'd like to see.
What a great answer. I love how inclusive that is also. Like you have your style, your content, but you're not limiting it to just that. You're trying to make a change in people, whatever change they're trying to impart onto the world, onto their communities. Is that intentional, or did that kind of grow as you started this?
I think that's intentional. I've always been a person who's been a little bit of a fish out of water.
Ooh.
So my dad was from Cuba.
Okay.
And my mom is from Jamaica. She's 93. And my dad was always a trailblazer. He was the first African-American head of the English department at La Sierra University, first Black dean of the graduate school, Loma Linda University. He was doing these things. And so I was always in new territory where I was often, not around people that had my same culture or my same ideas or values even. But it then allowed me to look at the world differently, and it allowed me to appreciate differences and even look forward to being in environments that are like that, because that then became home for me. And so I have now an eclectic sound when it comes to the music that I make. When people talk to me, they might say, "Oh, you're articulate." Okay, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but my dad had a PhD in English. Maybe he used a lot of words, and I grabbed some of them and I used them, right? But musically speaking, I would be encouraged, "Oh, Dave, your sound, you really need to figure out how you can blend in with a market that will receive you." And I constantly then was being encouraged to adapt in some way in order to be accepted. And so what was exciting to me is that once I found my way through the jungle of social media, I found that when I was authentic and spoke from my heart, it resonated with a tribe that was my tribe. And so it was okay if it didn't resonate with everybody else, but the people that it resonated with, we could have community and we could grow and I could serve them. And I realized, well, it's true for me. It's probably true for other people too. You're being told that you need to be one way, but in reality, if you're authentic, your true message will resonate with someone else who's part of your tribe. I think that's a good way to say it.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back to your dad, both your parents, honestly, and zoom out a little bit. But my question is, well, I'll establish it first. I view artists or content creators, musicians, much like entrepreneurs. I mean, it's a risky world. You got to be brave enough to go into that wilderness or that jungle of social media, as you called it, and blaze a trail. So that's not so easy for most people. Maybe most people want a secure 9 to 5, et cetera, et cetera. I find that in most people's journeys, there has been some mentor, some guide, some inspiration that has helped people understand that those doors are possible to them, understand that they can make it even when it gets challenging. Sounds like your dad was that type of person for you. Like he set a model for you to believe that you can do it, because a lot of people don't have that. Uh, so one, do you believe that to be true? Two, are there any other mentors or people that have helped inspire you to believe in yourself that you can do this thing, which is quite an accomplishment, to be clear?
Mm, thank you. um, wow. Wow. So about, let's see, 1990 is, I guess, almost 25 years ago. Yeah. Right.
Sadly.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah. Um, um,
Wait, is that true? No, buddy. I think it's more than that.
oh my God. It is. You're right. Oh my goodness.
we're both
Oh,
we're both holding on. Oh, we're holding on for dear life.
okay.
I'm
Well,
just, I'm
yeah.
crying.
Let me tell you a story that happened a long time
Wow.
ago.
We both were sold on that, and then I was like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah, I wish. Okay.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Let's
So
let's rein it in.
in 1989, 90, I spent a year teaching English as a second language in Korea. And while I was there, I was trying to figure out what would be the next chapter of my life after I was done. And so when I came home, my dad was on travel, but I was going to have that conversation, that, so son, what are you going to do conversation? And I was frightened because there were established patterns that I could go on and paths, like you talk about, the traditional 9 to 5. And then this idea of being a musician was, like being an entrepreneur. This risky thing. I believe that I have this special thing that I want to share, but I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, but I'm going to figure it out. Well, my dad came back home about a week after I came back from teaching in Korea. And at the job that he was at, he got out at noon. And so he came home and I was there at the piano playing, and I greeted him. And then he said, well, son, have you decided what you're going to do? And then I said, well, I've thought about it and I want to do music. And then he said, I have no problem with that, son. Just make sure you have something to fall back on. And he started going about his business. I was so excited. Oh, wow. My dad's giving me his blessing on doing the risky thing that I believe in. So he went downstairs. He put some oil in a frying pan and he went downstairs to go through his mail. And I was at the piano playing, and I'm excited now. And then I smelled some smoke, and then I went and saw that the oil in the frying pan had actually caught on fire because no one was paying attention to it, because he was downstairs looking at his mail and I was making music, excited because I had my dad's blessing to do music. So I yelled, told my dad what was going on. I ran downstairs to look for the fire extinguisher. By the time I got upstairs, he'd figured out how to get it out, but he had inhaled a lot of smoke. And so I looked at my dad. He didn't look so good. And I was like, do you want me to help you outside? And I was helping him outside, and he was stumbling. It was difficult. And then I said, do you want me to call an ambulance? And he nodded. So I helped my dad out the door, and he collapsed in my arms. And there was an emergency room nurse that happened. God blessed me with this. An emergency room nurse happened to be visiting my next door neighbor. And they saw my dad collapse, and they ran over and started doing CPR immediately. But unfortunately, at 4 p.m. that day, my dad died. So I had this strange juxtaposition. There were a lot of people who wanted me to honor my dad and be a pastor or educator like my dad. And my dad had given me his blessing to do the thing in my heart, the music thing. And so I guess it's been 30 some years, right? Over the next few decades, that has been my journey, is like to really pursue the thing I got permission for my dad to do the day that he passed away.
Buddy, I wish that wasn't something that we shared in common, but I have a very, very similar story myself from when I lost my dad, holding him in my arms, just the same. So I just want to take a moment to send some love to you on that one. And boy, it's life changing. Yeah, we'll get into that more, but I think that's really beautiful. Um, let's fast forward a little bit because we're here to talk about the success that you've had on social media and building your community, building your tribe, as you called it. And I know that you're all over the place, like most of us are in terms of social media, but TikTok has been really good for you. You've done really well there with over 1 million followers, like I said earlier, which is incredible. What a feat. But I want to go back to the beginning. What was the moment where you were like, I've heard about this TikTok thing, and you probably had thoughts with that. And there was one day where you're like, all right, I'm going to do it. Take me
Okay.
there.
All right. So what happened was at the beginning of the pandemic, one of my friends, Jeff Vargas, who's a public speaker, he decided to get um, several of us who went to high school together at Tacoma Academy in Tacoma Park, Maryland. He got us on a Zoom and he called it Dudes Chat. So we were going to get together. And since people couldn't go anywhere, we were going to hang out together and encourage each other on a weekly basis. So the very first Dudes Chat, Kevin, who's one of Jeff's close friends, his mother had passed away. And he said to me, hey, Dave, would you mind singing a hymn every morning on Facebook to help me get through the loss of my mother? So at the time when he said it, I hadn't been doing as much music stuff because my marriage fell apart. I was a little salty. I didn't really feel like doing what I used to do. But when he asked me, I felt like, okay, well, here's someone who actually needs what I have. I can do this, right? And so I said yes to him. And the thing that I quickly learned was Kevin was blessed by this, but if you never knew David Griffiths, you would never discover me singing these hymns. And so I didn't have a large bank account to buy ads on Facebook. So I did my research and I found out from Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
Hey.
He said the best place to grow organically as a business on social media was TikTok. And I said, TikTok? I thought that was for like high school girls that want to dance. I don't have that gift. So I then said, all right, well, I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to laser beam focus on the one place until I figure out how it works. Because if this guy is telling me this, I don't want to be the person who heard about it but never took action. And I'm really in need of figuring out a solution. And so that's when I decided to go all in on TikTok.
Have you ever connected with Gary V?
No, I've never have. Well, no, I take that back. Late one night, because I know at that time, especially, that he said that he would do his own messages. So late one night, we exchanged messages, but no, I've never met him in real life.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I think that's just such a good testimony to him and how he helps people. I mean, I'm a fan of his as well, and so I think that's incredible. And there are a lot of people that have been impacted by his philosophy and perspective and the way he shouts it from the rooftop. So that's really cool. And I'm glad that you touched on the age thing. That was where I wanted to go, because people still have that thought. Now, they definitely did 4 or 5 years ago when you were starting out, that thought of like, oh, it's just for this group of people. When I'm giving my workshops, I hear people say it, older, not older, that sounds bad, but just, grown folks,
Yes.
who are real estate agents or whatever they are, whomever I'm speaking to at the moment, they have that thought. But even now, I'm a part of a startup right now, and even people on my team, when we're talking about where to, put our content, some people still have that thought. I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I think that's still a limiting belief for folks that like or even social media at all. Like, what do you say to the person who's like, I'm too old for that. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say, or like it's past me, or I don't understand how to do all that. Like, what advice would you give that person?
I would say what you say will resonate with your tribe. So I have Yeah, like um, so I was involved in a community. I joined a program with a coach, and this coach, she last year I think she won a 2 Comma Club award from ClickFunnels. So she's doing really well. She doesn't have as many followers as I do, but she obviously has the business piece dialed in. So I'm in our class, I'm in our coaching, and she's talking to everyone. And she goes, David, um, you're so successful, and it's really great because you can tell people that the average person can be successful because you're not who I would traditionally think would be successful on social media. I'm like, stab me, why don't you? But I smiled and I said, oh, okay. So I think her point was, that she would think that the 20 or 30 something year old person, who works out at the gym every day, in designer clothing might be that person that you would see as the influencer. But what a great testimony that I'm in my 50s, and that's when I started growing on social media. For 13 years, I was on YouTube and I only had a little over 100 followers.
Hmm.
And then when I got help with a coach and with a focus, I was able to have success. And you who are mature can do the same thing too.
Well, and one thing I've noticed actually with people with experience, I'm in the filmmaking world, so a lot of the people I follow are screenwriters. Well, one thing that comes with age is wisdom, is experience, right? And so hearing from someone who's been a screenwriter for 30 years, for example,
Mm,
can carry a lot more weight than someone who became one 3 months ago. So, in fairness to people who may be a little more experienced, we'll call them, like that's a value, right? Like that is something that not a lot of people have. You can look back down the mountain and help somebody with guidance. And so, I think if people who feel like it's too late in their game can remember that fact, like you have a wealth of knowledge because you have all these years on people, like that's an asset. That's an
mm,
asset that you can use. I want to go back to the coach because this comes up a lot, but it came up even last week on the show. Just the power of coaches, right? It's so important. So I asked last week's guest, why should you invest in a coach, for example? But I want to know more specifically about what this coach helped you see,
okay.
that helped you narrow that vision towards success on social media. You said you've been on YouTube for 13 years. What are the doors that coach helped you unlock?
Great question. All right. So the first thing that coach got me to see was, um, this speaks to the authenticity. Find 8 or 9 things that you're passionate about,
Mm.
right? And then start posting about them. And your audience will teach you what it is that they want from you. Oh, okay. And so, yes, they taught me, for example, the importance of getting people's attention at the beginning of your content. So if there's over 8 billion people in the world and over 5 billion people are online, and you're competing not just with your neighbor for attention, or if you're in business with the other business in town that's like yours, you're now competing with all these people all around the world who are sending out messages. So you have to figure out how to do something in the first couple seconds to get someone to pay attention to you. So that's something that coach gave me awareness of and gave me suggestions of how to do that. And then after that, it was about me learning from my audience what it is that they wanted. And I think that literally having the scientific process for me of, I've since added to the sauce that he initially gave me. I was blessed to interview Brendan Kane,
Yeah.
who,
Yeah.
yeah. So um, that was a very humbling experience because he took a lot of time to try to get me to understand that it was the contextualization of the content that was key in making it go viral, so that it could be of a specific subject, but if you contextualized it right, it could be relatable to a larger group of people than just the people that were interested in that particular subject. So between what I learned from being a part of his community and studying their techniques and what I learned from my original coach, um, I then came up with a framework that I've helped my students with to basically get familiar with what's working in your particular vertical analyze the content that's working. Like, let's say you take 4 or 5 people that you admire that are in your vertical, in your subject
Mm.
matter area, that are doing well on social media, and you look at their profile and you pick 4 or 5 pieces of content that have done exceptionally well, and you create a spreadsheet and you put these in there, and then you take some time to reflect on, well, why do you think this one did well? Why do you think this one did well? And do that for, say, that block of 25 videos. Um, you start to come up with theories. And then, of course, what you need to do is you need to look at their low performing videos and make sure that they don't have the same characteristics that you're crediting with making the other videos high performing. And then what you do is you take from that list a few of them that really you like, they speak to you, and then you look at, and I'm talking to a filmmaker, you look at the way it was created and
Yeah.
you create your own version of it, right? So how did it begin? Was it like a close up? Hey, wait, look, was it something like that? And then what was the pacing? And by literally looking at the structure, when you recreate it, the algorithm goes, oh yeah, this is something that's worked before. Yeah, let's go ahead and send it out
Mm.
to more people than just your regular, um, you know, uh, not not strategically crafted video. And okay, so that's if you're really interested in figuring out how to get massive exposure. But I have a heart for the tech challenged. And what I find is that message of authenticity and speaking, I learned to speak to myself. I learned to speak to myself. And when I could speak to myself, even looking at myself, what would I wish someone had told me 6 months ago? Yeah.
It's
When I
funny.
did that, that started working.
Yeah, I had an idea. I'm one of those people that struggles with like 1,000 ideas and things that I want to pursue. One of the guests on the show calls it a multi potentialite, and he helps people understand how to weave all those things together. That you don't have to niche down; you can just be yourself. But I say that to say, like, I had an idea for a channel that I still may do. I don't know. But it was exactly what you just said, which is just like letters to my former self, which could have been me last week or could have been me 10 years ago. Just things I wish I had heard. I totally agree with that. Whenever I'm speaking to me, like just I'm literally just ranting at myself. Those always work well because someone out there needs to hear that like I needed to a month ago or a year ago or whatever. So I love that you landed there, Bal, because I totally feel you on that point. Now, with trying to focus on authenticity and also maybe playing to the tech challenge, whether that be yourself or those that you're trying to help. As a creator, how do you try to show up? Like, what is your strategy or what is your approach to content creation? And I can be more specific, but I'll see if that question works for you.
So I believe the reason why for 13 years I created content on YouTube and didn't have that many followers was because at the time, as I would say many of my generation on Facebook do, I looked at social media as the place where I go, hey, did you see Susie had a ballet
Sure.
performance, and oh, Johnny's on the basketball team, and they're in a tournament, and oh, I'm going to Paris this year for vacation. Look at my plan,
Yeah.
as opposed to, who is it that I'm trying to serve again? Oh, okay. Well, what are their problems?
Mm.
Okay, do I have something that can speak to those, or maybe soothe the pain that they're going through? When I started making content about those that I wish to serve, that was a game changer. And so that's what I look to do. I actually was recording a piece of content I have a community where I teach people content creation um, strategy. And so I was recording that today. Like, I want people to make sure that they align their content to the pain points and the problems of those they wish to serve. That to me is success. It makes for success.
Got you. And for those that may not be familiar with your content, what is it exactly that you tend to do? You seem to be very consistent. I'll say that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what is a typical piece of David Griffiths content look like or sound like?
Okay, so I'm gonna I'm gonna anchor it in the context. When you say a typical piece, let's just say the diet of David might be different than the person who's beginning.
Sure.
Okay, so the diet for me is the beginning of the day. You'll get a morning prayer from me. That is the my morning prayer videos will get um, on Instagram will get between 20 and 30,000 views. Now, at bedtime prayer, which currently I also do, will have less than that. Now, in between, then, there are other kinds of content that I post, and I don't expect them to get the same number of views as those. So, there are basic community building posts, and when I'm busy, I don't create those as often, but those basic community building posts could be something as simple as, hey, wait, don't scroll. I'm just curious. I'm trying to get to know my online family. What's your favorite kind of food? I'll go first. I love Korean food. Let me know in the comments what's your favorite. Doing content like that allows you, like, there you'll find like Fred who likes Indian food will make a comment and tell you how he likes mango lassis, and as you communicate with these people that answer these community awareness content, you'll find that those people will often be some of the first people to comment on your other pieces of content that get larger views. But you start developing this core, this like inner circle. And so it's very, to me, from the beginning of my journey, I wanted that. So I figured out things that my audience wanted as far as a larger um, swath. I don't know the word. A larger scope of my audience,
There you go.
but I think it's really important to have those kinds of things to have like an inner circle of really highly engaged individuals on your page as well. And then there are tips about social media. There are snippets of podcasts like this. So that would be like some of the regular mixture that you would get.
Why do you think your content resonates with folks so deeply?
Because I am speaking authentically and I'm speaking from my heart. Honestly, my first video that went viral, I taking that idea that you have for the channel that you're mentioning, I spoke to myself and I um, said, hey, wait, I just want to tell you something. Don't quit. Don't quit. And then I explained why, talking to myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why the person who's listening to me should not quit. And when I'm speaking in those moments, sometimes it's what I needed to hear at that moment. Sometimes it's me knowing what someone else might need to hear who's going through what I've been through. The way that that lands is different than here are 3 tips on how you can grow your social media account, right? Because it's coming from a deep place in the heart. It's coming from experiences, sometimes even trauma, or that's why when we talk about pain points, I think they're so important, because oftentimes something that has really been emotionally impactful to someone, when you speak to it, they go, huh?
Mm-hmm.
They pay attention and it draws them in. So I think it's my authenticity and my consistency.
Mm.
I was I was on a mission, and it's not that I'm not on a mission now. My mission's a little bit different. Now my mission is create a business that will allow me to enjoy my mother's twilight years and mentor my son. That's where
Mm.
space that I'm in right now. But yeah, is there any you? I think it sounded like you had some specific questions that you might have.
Buddy, I got lots of questions. I can keep on going. Let me ask you this. Now, obviously, you come from a religious background with your family, with your content. It's prayer based, much of it at least. I wonder, do you find that it also resonates with non Christians, perhaps?
I do, and so It does. My opinion, because when I say faith based, I'm not only speaking to the person that goes to a particular church or a particular denomination. I think what happens is when you share faith based content, it speaks to what is it that you value,
Totally.
right? And so that really resonates. So let me throw in a bonus tidbit
Yeah.
here. Whatever the platform is promoting, make sure you do it, because when you do it, then the algorithm will give more exposure to your account and what you've already posted. So at a certain point, TikTok was highly promoting going live. So I used to go live multiple times a day, and I would play hymns by request. Interesting thing was, I would play hymns by request, and then I'd have people. This was a regular occurrence. People would say, "I'm not really a Christian, but I really like the vibe of what you're doing."
Yeah.
And I believe that that's my goal. My goal is, if the sincerity of who I am and what I aspire to, if that comes across in my content, it will draw people. It won't just draw people who go to the same church that I go to. It'll just
Right.
draw people who are into those values. I think that's lacking a lot in the
Yeah.
content that is out there today.
Yeah, and I think it might be, this is an assumption and a broad one, so forgive me, but I think it might be lacking in faith-based content too. One of my favorite things, okay, you're nodding your head. I feel a little bit better about that because that's you know, I want to be fair here, but I think that's what's so powerful about your content is you're not pigeonholing it, you're not labeling it in this tiny little box, and you're speaking to things that people care about. You said the word people value, right? It's no secret or surprise why the themes of religion, of all religions, are similar. You know, what we care about as people is what we care about, and it's always been that way.
Mm,
But I think that's what's so powerful and is allowing you to speak to a wider audience,
mm,
because you're not leading heavy handed with that, though that is your backbone, right? Like that is your constitution.
mhm,
But I think you're touching a lot of people in a deeper way, or maybe it's more about breadth than depth, right? Because you're reaching more people. I'm kind of rambling now. I'm hoping that's making sense, but I think that you're intentionally doing it, and I think it's working because of that, and I really respect that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, let me say this, and maybe this will be helpful to someone. There are younger in my life when I had as the option, become a musician, become a pastor, become a teacher. As I was looking at my different options, one of the reasons why I wanted to have a little bit more freedom in my journey was because there were many things that I kept discovering along the way. And so I didn't want to tell people things that I didn't believe, because it was my job to.
Hmm.
And so that's allowed me some freedom. And I laugh because over the years, I realized there will always be things that I don't understand. And even the more that I study and, you know, studying, I studied Greek, I studied Hebrew, and, whatever I'm studying to try to get deep. And there's more stuff.
Hmm.
And so at some point, you have to say, all right, I have my 20-year-old son who's in the room next to me. Um, what would make his life better? I want to create a world as part of my walk with God, my religious experience. I want to create a world that's better for him. He has things that he needs support with. I want to create a world where people have a propensity to create spaces of support as something that we go, oh, that's what we do. That's who we are. Like, no, we make sure that we support those who need support.
Yeah.
That's part of our culture. That's part of who we are. So to me, I latched onto those things, and I find joy that I find in so many diverse places.
Yeah.
People with that hope and that truth and that desire in their heart,
Hmm.
and I think that's really important.
What are some of the more surprising reactions or comments that you've received over your time? And you don't, if you can't be specific, that's okay, but does anything come to mind of kind of unexpected reactions?
Unexpected reactions. Um,
Like, has there been any interaction with a follower or a commenter that has really surprised you that you reached them on that level?
um, I, I don't know that I have an answer for that one.
Hmm.
I, so I, mm, I have so much joy from the regular comments that I get. Um, there's a young man named Scully who is writing a book, and when I'm live playing hymns from time to time, he'll come on and he'll say, "Thank you, man. You were a blessing to me when I really needed light and needed someone to help guide me. You don't realize what you're doing for so many." So I get choked up when I think about
Yeah.
these different. Um, but I believe in that on social media. I
Yeah.
believe that whatever it is that you are passionate about, like you're passionate about storytelling, I believe that there's within your love and your passion for that thing. I believe that as you share it, you will actually touch someone in unexpected ways,
Yeah.
just as long as you don't change what you're doing because you think you need to change it because it's not sexy to the algorithm.
Mm.
You
Well
know,
said. I think maybe a better question on my part would have been, what are some of your favorite comments or interactions rather than most surprising? You've mentioned the word consistency a couple of times. I already wanted to take us there. So, talk to me about the role and relevance of consistency. If you want to do this, if you want to pursue this content game, now we've talked about authenticity, we've talked about a few techniques and tricks of the trade, if you will. Um, where does consistency fall in for you as a creator in terms of your potential success?
here, think of it in this practicality. So we talked a little bit about a process whereby we could come up with ideas of content that would do well based upon our research.
Right.
Well, in order for us to learn ourselves, we need to regularly post content, see how it does, so that we can analyze what did well, what didn't do well. So, for example, and if I'm coaching someone, I'm expecting we're looking every single week at that. And in order for it to make sense, you have to post regularly in order for there to be data for us to use to get insight. If you don't, like if you several times I've had students who've had mindset or anxiety issues and maybe they want it to be perfect and then they don't execute. And then the problem is I can't say what the data is teaching us if there is no data. And done is better than perfect. You'd be better off creating something that isn't quite exactly what you wanted, but it's out there and we can see your 85% what you wanted content, how that's interacting with your audience. So every week, analyzing what's working, double down on what's working. In order to do that, then you have to consistently post. Different platforms are more receptive to lots of content. When I was on TikTok, that skews a little bit younger. TikTok, there were days I would post 8 posts in a day. Like I would go hard because I wanted to learn and because the way it was set up, you weren't necessarily being penalized. Whereas on Instagram, I find the culture is a little bit different. If you don't have content like I do that maybe serves a function in people's day, that then allows me to post other things in the middle of the day where they're not going to be like, hey, I already heard from David today. They're going to be like, oh, well, he was doing that in the morning, but that's just what we do in the morning. Well, what else you got, Dave? What's going
Yeah.
on with you? So Instagram, maybe, posting once a day is good, or maybe twice a day, as far as like a regular reel or a regular post. But the stories, you can do a bunch of story posts. That's
Hmm.
your behind the scenes stuff. And I recommend as you do the stories posts, maybe you're showing pictures of what's going on behind the scenes, some cool things that you noticed, and then maybe the fifth story, you let them know about something that's an offer that you have. So that's how I would use stories. But on Instagram, you probably are good posting once a day or maybe twice a day. On TikTok, you can do a lot more. And then on other platforms, it just kind of varies a little bit based upon what you're trying to do, who you're trying to reach. But the consistency gives you the data that enables you to pivot and learn. Uh-oh. Oh, there you are.
Hey.
I thought I was like, did I leave or something?
No, we switched. Yeah, here we are. We're live, baby. Okay, so let's shift. We've still got a few minutes. At what point did you then realize, like, okay, now there's a new opportunity for me here? And I'm talking specifically about your Content Creation Academy, your new business that you've created. Now, that's a pivot in the story. And that's a great moment in any story, right? Where there's some significant change. You were here to build a community, and now you're like, you see this opportunity. Walk me through that step of the story.
I tried to figure out, okay, so I'm figuring this thing out, and I'm driven, and so now that I have all these followers, what am I supposed to do to serve them? And I asked questions to the audience, and there's a small subsection that are interested in growing on social media, but I don't need, if you have 1.5 million followers online, it's not like you need more than like 0.5% of them to be interested in your offer. So I realized there's a way that I could create community and serve the community at large, and then let my community know, hey, for those of you who happen to be coaches or entrepreneurs, I want to teach you what I've learned in my journey. And so it just seemed like a good fit, especially as I'm looking to monetize and still have a mission as well,
And what's the best way someone can work with you through that?
If you have a question specifically that you would like to ask me, I say drop me an email, david@contentcreatingacademy.com. If you'd like to learn about Content Creating Academy, then visit contentcreatingacademy.com. But I created something called the Quick Wins Challenge to enable people to work one-on-one with me to get some quick wins to see what it would be like to be part of our community. And so, I sold like 15 of those immediately, and then we stopped promoting them. But that's one way that someone can get an idea. Well, what's it like to work with David, and can he really get me results?
I'm thinking about Gary V, who we brought up earlier, and some of the core values that he stands for. And with all of our talk about authenticity and the mission and the purpose, what we're trying to do, I wonder what role does gratitude play for you in this game specifically?
Every day, that same friend Jeff that started Dudes Chat, he once showed me how he starts his day out. Every day, I have a Google Doc, and as part of my morning practice, I make a list of things that I'm grateful for. What this does is it enables me to be focused on things to be grateful for, and it helps me to build momentum. One of the other things that I like to do is I like to celebrate wins. Every day I pick 3 wins that are the things that are the must. If I don't get anything else done today, I need to get these 3 things done. Those are also in that same document. And so when I do a little thing towards one of those wins, I celebrate it. And I try to do that as much as I can. Be grateful and celebrate the small wins. And that helps me to build momentum, because I think that what happens is if we don't do that, then if I go back to David, who posted 57 days and hardly saw any growth, but on day 58, then suddenly he, creates this video that goes viral and gets over 1 million views. and then he starts having hundreds of people follow his account. If you don't have something to help encourage you in the process, you might give up right before you get to your breakthrough moment.
And how important is the ability to adapt in the social media game?
Mm. It's extremely important.
Tell me more.
Hmm. So different. Um, what I try to do is I try to distill what is the charisma, what is the essence of what it is that we do. So if it's um, I'm going to get someone's attention in some way, and I'm at the end of having gotten their attention and whatever else I share, I'm going to ask them to do something. So if I have this as my pattern, I'm going to make sure I do these two things, and in the middle, I hope to delight them with a story, with value. It's best yet if there's emotional content in the story, in the value. If there's humor, that's great too. But whatever that moment of excitement or entertainment or emotion is, if I get people's attention, I create that moment. It has some value in it, story in it, and then I ask them to do something. Whether I'm creating short form video or long form video, whether I'm creating static posts, whether I'm doing a newsletter, whether I'm doing a blog, I can remember this general principle of doing that, and then apply it to the next thing that comes out, the new TikTok that comes out, right? But if I don't have those basic principles and then have a spirit to be willing to pivot from static images to short form vertical video, then I'm going to get lost with the change of technology.
What's next for you?
Oh, what's next for me is working on and not in my business.
Ooh,
That's what's next for me.
heard that. Absolutely. A new chapter, a new growth, a new adaptation.
Yes.
Listen, before we go, I gotta just say and recognize you told this great story about, your father and the decision you made with his blessing to do what you wanted to do versus going the path that maybe the community expected you to. I'll use that word cautiously, of being a pastor in his footsteps, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't call, attention to the fact that through your own journey in your own way, you're essentially doing that. And that's incredibly beautiful. You're nodding your head because I think that you've realized that too. And I just think that is so beautiful. And I just want to ask, seeing what you've done, do you think that he would be proud of you?
Yeah. I know he would be proud of me. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Man, I'm so glad to have had you on the show. Didn't know you before this, right? And I'm so glad you reached out. I'm so glad we connected. I have a lot of other things I'd like to talk to you about, so I hope that we can continue this connection, my friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you, David. I hope you have a great day, great week, great Christmas season.
Thank you. You too.